Your political heroes are going to be rolling into town for a legislative session. And there is, because there's money behind it, there is going to be a push to legalize gambling in the state of Texas. There's going to be a big push, and it's going to be talked about. It's going to be debated a lot. So just sort of prepare yourself for it. I have no problem if somebody says I have a problem with it. I don't want it. I don't want it to happen. That kind of stuff. You don't want to do it. I get it, but it's going to be front and center during the legislative session. So the NCAA director and the NFL head of the Players Association were in front of Congress. Actually, I think it was a Senate committee this week. And they say they want states to rein in gambling. And if you ask yourself why, the answer is this. They say, with evidence, players are being harassed. Now, I would add to it, they're not just being harassed by bettors, they're being harassed by those that have taken the crack that is fantasy football. Yeah, that's how into it people are. So, look, I don't believe for a second, to be honest, I don't believe for a second the NFL wants this to go away at all. No way. One of the best things that has happened to the NFL, what has made the NFL as giant as it is, the following as big as it is, the business as big as it is largely because of betting and fantasy football. I mean, largely. Maybe even more fantasy than betting, but it's the same thing. It's been the best thing that has happened to the industry of pro football since it was created for TV. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying there are not problems. I'm just saying I don't believe the NFL really wants it to go away. I don't think that at all. But they're bringing up some problems, and I think they're real. And I think if you live in the state of Texas and you're about to hear people start debating about sports betting, I think you're going to hear more about what is just reported today. The NFL and the NCAA say that players are being harassed. Okay, they're getting harassed over prop bets largely. And the timing of this is interesting, and it's going to be used and it's going to be kicked around. I think it should in the state of Texas. So here we go. Those in favor of legalizing have argued and will argue in Texas a couple of different ways. One, just the simple economics, right? Money is going places that you want to keep here. So there's going to be the argument about, hey, look, people are going to bet anyway, so why not keep those revenues here? As it works now, you have to go out of state, get on, there's a firewall that'll stop you from making a bet out of state. But there's an economic argument that it should be here. Now, the other argument, Republicans are going to try to sell it this way, and that is, hey, it's freedom, 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 leave people alone, let them do what they want kind of stuff. That argument's going to be made too. So what's going to be used against, of course, are pretty obvious things like, the downside that comes with it, the problems that come with this. And now I think the extra argument added, and that is it's a harassing thing for players. And I don't disagree with that at all. But here we go. I don't know where you want to go with this. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I have a politically incorrect take on why this is presenting the problem that it is, but I don't completely disagree that that athletes, college and pro athletes, are being harassed by bettors and fantasy nerds. Don't deny it at all. All right, it says NCAA President Charlie Baker and NFLPA representative have urged Congress to rein in the sports betting industry at a Senate hearing, calling for federal legislation to combat gambling addiction and abuse of athletes. What legislation would that be? Either you're going to legalize or you're not. I mean, if you just stop right there and ask yourself, what is it you think a representative of you? What can they propose? What can they do that would fix this? Say it. What would that be? I mean, if it's legal, it's legal. I think there's another issue here. But then if you don't want the problems that come with it, then you don't want betting. Because you can't, I don't think you can have it both ways. You're not going to have legalized gambling and not have some problems. But you're going to make it illegal because athletes are getting harassed. Do you agree with that? At the Senate Judiciary hearing, according to ESPN, Baker and NFLPA Representative Johnson Batamosi, who played for Stanford and spent 9 years in the NFL, spoke about the increasing harassment athletes face from bettors in the stands and on social media. They noted the, quote, insidious effect that sports betting has on the mental health of players and fans. He mentioned a Buffalo Bills player who received death threats earlier this year because he missed a field goal. Look, I'm not minimizing that, but that's not new. That's not new. There is something that is different nowadays, but death threats are not new when you throw an interception or miss a field goal. They also mentioned a Minnesota Vikings player who deleted his social media because he received so much harassment about fantasy football. Oh, gosh, those nerds. Nothing else matters in life to fantasy players, does it? Does it? You play fantasy, you've done nothing but send and return email all day. Richard Blumenthal, Senator of Connecticut, introduced 2 pieces of sports betting legislation. He said the U.S. is, quote, in the midst of a sports betting boom that is one of the most severe public health problems of today. He said the techniques of sports books they use to target losing bettors and prevent winners from playing is staggering. He says, quote, it would make Wall Street look like child's play. Baker said that an NCAA championship team received 24/7 police protection because of a threat from a sports bettor. He urged Congress to pass legislation that would eliminate prop bets on college athletes, which are currently legal in 20 states. Okay. Here's where it's cited most often. And if you didn't know about this guy, it's been talked about quite a bit. All I'm going to say is think how few the examples are. All right, I'm not saying the examples of screwing up your life or screwing with an athlete don't exist. But in the context of how many billions, hundreds of millions, no, billions of dollars that are circulating, the knuckleheads are actually kind of few and far between. But here we go. Here's an example that is used often. I don't think it's a good one, but okay. Toronto Raptors ex-player, Jonte Porter. What a piece of work this guy was. He pleaded guilty this summer to altering his performance to help bettors win wagers on the under on his statistics in multiple games last season. What he did, this guy was, he got busted in no time. This is one of my arguments, but we can have plenty of arguments about this. So there was an over-under bet, a prop that was made about him. He didn't play all that much, and so he decided to say he was sick and couldn't go in the game. So I guess that meant the under was obvious. And then when he did play in a couple games, the few minutes that he did play, he was bouncing them off the top of the backboard and all that stuff. And then he collected something like $400,000 or $300,000. Now, I'm not going to say that's nothing to most people, but had he just continued to play in the NBA, he would have made twice that much money. But he's an example. I mean, it is true. It did happen. It did. Senator Marsha Blackburn, oh boy, raised concerns about match fixing, especially as the U.S. prepares to host the World Cup in 2026. All right. So there's the gambling part. And then, of course, if you get in front of enough people in politics, what are they going to bring up? Oh, yeah, transgendered athletes, of course. You know, no matter what. Baker, the head of the NCAA, faced intense questioning from Senators John Kennedy, Louisiana, because things are going great in Louisiana, and everyone's favorite, lovable Josh Hawley of Missouri, who asked why the NCAA allows transgender athletes to compete in women's sports. The hearing is on gambling, so of course they talk about transgendered athletes. Do you bet on transgendered athletes? I missed that prop bet. The head of the NCAA pointed out of 510,000 college athletes, he knew of fewer than 8 that might be transgendered. But okay, that's just par for the course, whatever happens. So, all right, what are we going to do? Are they getting harassed? Yes. It's a scary setup. Yes. It's a concern for college programs. To me, I don't know that I buy that the NFL is worried about this. I don't. I'm not saying they're thrilled, but I don't think they want it reined in at all. In fact, they probably shouldn't want it reined in. I think college athletics are a completely different story. I think that is ripe. I do. I think the college game is, let me set it up this way, is I bet you there's been a scandal already or something has happened. We don't know that much about it. That, some guy, look, not everybody plays at Texas that has a Lamborghini and lives in a high rise and all that stuff. I mean, the average player, let's say it's Cincinnati, to make $5 or $10,000 to miss a field goal as a player at Cincinnati is a big deal. Hey, guy hangs out with other people around campus, drinks beer with some frat guys or whatever. I mean, that access and that accessibility I could see could be a problem. $5 to $10 to $15,000 would mean a lot to that guy. To an NFL or NBA player, it does not. It does not. I mean, the fact that there's so much betting going on and we have one scandal that was outed within 12 hours, I think is proof that fixing games is not an issue. The money is too big in the NBA and the NFL. It just, even this idiot that was missing shots on purpose, he was set to make $300,000 and he was just some scrub at the end of the bench and he was going to make $300,000. So he tried to throw a game to make net $10,000. So there's not incentive in pro sports to throw a game. I mean, plus the fact that the betting is so above board, far more above board than the people in office, probably far more above board than the people, grilling the head of the NCAA and the Players Association. At least those guys don't practice insider trading. So I'm sorry. If you don't want to bet, you don't want to bet. And if you want to argue that you think it brings bad things to the bettors, then make that argument. But the idea that you shouldn't have legalized betting because of the athletes in pro sports, I don't think is enough of a sell. I said pro sports. I don't know what you want to do about college sports. I mean, I think this thing is coming. I've said it for a year and a half now. Someone's going to throw a game because you're not rich in the sport anyway. But this is less of a problem. This thing about the athletes getting harassed, and it must suck, and I don't deny it. But here's where I'm going to give a politically incorrect answer. You may not like this, but once you get away from the fixing part, which I don't think is a real argument, I don't. And then if you want to argue the bettors run risk, the bettors have problems, then you have every right to make that argument, and it's true. Now, you can't have the gambling and not have some of the problems. Okay? It can't be perfect. It won't be perfect. The industry itself is pretty close, though. Here's the issue with the guys saying they're getting harassed, okay? They say they're getting harassed. They say fantasy players are harassing them. Are we sure that's a betting problem and not a social media problem? Okay? I mean, I hate to do it, but, if you just be less high profile, if you'd be less accessible, if you be less connected to the public, be less narcissistic and connected to the public, I don't know that you get harassed as much. I mean, the thing is that particularly college athletes, you can't be married to the public and in constant reaction to the public and not expect that the public now has access to you and is going to talk trash. You can't. That's not the way it works. Now, I'm not blaming the athlete, but I'm just saying you make yourself accessible. You constantly make yourself accessible. Yes, they can find you, and they can find you easily. And a knucklehead eventually will say something and make a threat. I'm not denying it. Maybe you just made yourself less accessible. Sorry. It's the way it goes. Stardom sucks. It sucks. High profile sucks. But I think you have it both ways. You can't sit there and be online all the time and sharing with people, and then certainly the frat guys pop up and are mad because, because you missed 2 field goals. I don't think that's a betting problem. I think it's a social media problem. But nobody would dare say that. Hey, you know what, buddy? Talk to them less and you won't hear them. What do you want to do? You believe it? Is it enough? Is the harassment enough to say, not in my state, not this, not now? Are you willing to put up with what comes with it? And then your reaction to my politically incorrect response, and that is be less accessible and you hear less noise.
Hey, Austin, Jeff Ward here, and I never thought I'd be in an accident and need a personal injury attorney. And then sure enough, less than a mile from my house, I was blindsided. I was injured. My world was turned completely upside down. I called DJC Law and their team took care of everything. I got the best result possible. Don't just take my word for it. They have over 1,000 five-star reviews. So if you're injured, call 512-888-9999 and get your justice at teamjustice.com.